Please help me welcome John Bratsakis.
So can you all hear me? So thank you for having me. I don't know if Renee's here. Is Renee in? So I just have to big shout out to Renee, AACUC, for the opportunity to come speak with you today. So the main, I guess, catalyst for this discussion was some of you heard me talk about when in 2020 we reached out to Renee and the leagues reached out together to try to do something meaningful, and that was intentional, something that was going to be, had the foresight to continue and make it meaningful. So my comment to Caroline Willard, my counterpart, when she brought this idea up to the leagues, was to call Adrian Johnson. So we called Adrian and Renee and said, instruct us on what is meaningful. And it's the relationships that Renee has built that we were able to have a very honest and open conversation. So when Renee asked me about coming in and talking about a legacy lesson about relationships, we were talking about a program that we worked with Georgetown University to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace for credit unions. And one of the things in that is you develop an identity wheel. Has anybody ever done that? So you talk about how you identify. So I identify first as a Greek Orthodox Christian. So how many of you know Greeks? Would you say, we're a proud group. There's a lot of Greek pride. Okay. So then I said I'm a Greek American. And somebody said, whoa, stop. You can't say that. You're an American. I said, well, why is that? He goes, well, you've been here. You weren't born in Greece. And I said, well, but I'm second generation, and I believe the person was third or fourth generation. And the comment, and Renee and I were talking, and I'm like, well, why would that be any different? Like, why does it matter? I think we all are instructed by our past, and I think about talking to Larry Sewell. Larry talks about the dividend, paying the dividend, right? And we owe it to the people that came before us to pay it forward for the future. Because our families are watching us, whether they're here or they're upstairs. Our families are watching us. And I think, and I know my yaya, which is grandmother in Greek, in the bottom center there, if she's watching and I mess up, it's a whole lot worse with her being upstairs than if she were here. Because I don't know what's coming. The kutala would be coming, which is a wooden spoon in the Greek household. That's what would be coming. But what instructed me in my perspective is my Greek background. And if we could put the video back up real quick, or the slide. So in the bottom right, my family's experience in America started in 1911. Times were hard, World War I, before, during, and after. My grandfather, my papu on the right, on the bottom was $50 sent on a boat and said, find a better life in America. And talking to Renee, she humbly reminded me that her family came over on a boat as well, but in chains. And not to forget that, but it's a reminder to me of all of the different perspectives that all of us have and the lives we lived. My yaya, who's in the bottom middle, she was a force of nature. No one messed with her. Our stories of our family, she came in the 30s. And our stories, the first story you heard as a Greek was our Greek independence from 1821. So we just celebrated 200 years of independence of the Ottoman Turkish occupation. We heard that. We heard about the villages that my family grew up in during World War II when Mussolini was sent to negotiate the terms of surrender to the Greeks, and if you don't agree to it, then it's war. And the question was, his answer was oki, which is no. So if we were in trouble with my dad, and we asked my dad for something, he said oki. And we knew that however tough we thought we were having it, like, Dad, you're being really hard on us, he would say oki. And all that meant was, your ancestors were invaded, and what was told would be 11 days took 6 months to take Greece and delayed the Nazis to go into Russia. Those were the stories that we were instructed. So my first thing with relationships is being authentic. They're authentic. These faces are authentic. My big fat Greek wedding is authentic. We like parties. But let me tell you, when they came to America, these were the images they saw. This is a church that they built because during the occupation, whether it was the German occupation or the Ottoman occupation, during those times, you could not celebrate your faith. You couldn't sing in public. They built that into the traditions that we have. And my yaya would always tell me, because my brother and I spoke Greek until I was in first grade, and then we were told we couldn't speak Greek. And we'd walk in, so I was embarrassed. So fast forward about 30 plus years, we're in Greece with my kids and my family, and we're at the monastery of St. Andrew, and his relics are there in Patra. And I go to the priest and I say, "Is this the Church of St. Andrew in Greek?" And he says, "Nah, yes." And then I said, "Are there his relics here?" So the part of the cross that he was crucified on is actually at the monastery. So he starts saying, then he starts going tick-a-tack, tick-a-tack. He starts talking Greek really fast. I'm like, whoa, I don't speak that good of Greek. I can order food in Greek town, but let's not get crazy. So he looks at me and he goes, "You speak perfect Greek. Don't be embarrassed." And I'm like, "No, really, I don't speak Greek very well." So he goes on, and then he goes, "Fine, it's in the back." So my son looks at me, and then we're walking to the back, and he goes, and he looks at the priest, and the priest looks down, and he says, "Tell your father never be embarrassed." And my son goes, "Wow, he was really mad at you, Dad." But it was a lesson. It brought me back to first grade. It brought me back to this heritage and these images I had of heroes and role models that lived things and that made sure that our history and our past instructs our future. And never be embarrassed. My yaya was a very strong woman. When she was diagnosed with cancer, we were down in Arizona, and I remember the doctor coming in and looking at her and saying, "You have 6-7 days to live." My mom's crying, my uncle's there, and she looks and she says, "Who are you? God? You know God. You make my daughter cry. You? Out. I go back to Chicago. I will live." She lived for 6 years. So, but that was authenticity. To me, my family, being Greek, you never apologize. When you were in public with church and these men that married us, these priests that married us, we do a symbol, we do our cross, which we do this before every meal, and it's an expression no matter where we are. It can be when I did it at the invocation here, whatever it is about not being scared of who you are. And that's instructed me about being authentic, right? Because no matter who you are, that's who you're going to be. So if you interview and you try to be somebody else, eventually you're going back to you, and they didn't hire you. They hired the other person. I deal with politicians all the time. The hardest thing to do is authenticity, but you do find them. I know you had Dan speaking earlier. Dan does a very authentic. It's amazing in what we do that when you do find those rare politicians, it's a gift, and you can tell. So that's where we go. And then integrity, all of it bleeds into that. So when I talked about what I was taught when younger, where, integrity, right, is about doing the right thing when no one's looking. You've heard John Wooden, but C.S. Lewis is where I heard it. So in those stories that we heard about Ohi Day was Winston Churchill said, "From henceforth, never let it be said that Greeks fight like heroes, but rather heroes fight like Greeks." A great sense of pride that people recognized what a little tiny country was able to do to the mammoth superpower of the time. But today, you could probably say, I think my kids' generation will say this exact quote about the Ukrainian people. And if you think things don't repeat themselves, that's all we have to look at. 1940, 2021. So the other thing about integrity was our faith. Never apologizing for who we were. Never apologizing for church going 2 hours in another language. Sit down, listen, which was kind of cool because these hymns were like, you're in a really cool club. But it was also the hierarchy of our church. So in this picture from Life magazine, the gentleman that you see on the left is, he's the Greek Orthodox Archbishop of America at the time, Iakovos. And I was fortunate to hear him speak often, and he would talk often about his experiences of marching with Dr. King. And somebody said, well, weren't you nervous because you weren't an American citizen? You had threats of being deported. And his point was, that has nothing on what we were marching for. So he was instructive to us. And this image was often put up, especially in school, when we were learning about things in school. That's what my parents taught me. So in the 70s, these were the pictures we were given, because that was the example to follow. And then trust. So as many of you know, or some of you know, I played football, and I remember one of the things with trust is you have a team. You need to have that team. You need to focus on each other, right? You got to have your back. I have the same thing with the people I work with. And I remember a coach telling me, I said, Coach, I don't know, I may not be the best defensive tackle. I'm 5'7", 175 pounds, but I'm one of the best athletes. And he says, Johnny, you're going to play. He goes, I can't win without you, but I can't win with 11 of you either, right? But I trusted then that I'm not looking over my back, right? I have people that I can trust, just like with the team that I'm blessed to work with every day. And where's Andre Lucas here? And Mr. Lucas that you all know. And I think for those of you who have ever been around my mentor, former boss, Mike Valentine, I learned this in droves about celebrating other people's success. I mean, as Greeks, we love parties. If you've ever been to, that's why I love coming here, closest thing to going to a Greek gathering that I know of. Everybody's happy, everybody's excited, everybody's getting together, and everybody is welcomed. I feel more at home here than I feel anywhere else that I go. My first opportunity to speak at a national conference was here to induct Bert Hash, who I had just gotten to know, into the AACUC Hall of Fame. It was a huge honor. And what I remembered as we sat here last year, and you can see we got Andre a Hall of Fame jacket as well, is it's about celebrating others. If you can't, it's not about celebrating you, it's them. So with that, I will leave you with my thoughts on how do you build sustainable, real relationships. And more than anything is remember, don't be embarrassed. Thank you.